Today we're analyzing a game played by Magnus against a young opponent, Primbetov. This game was brought to my attention by Marko, my brother, who pointed out that it's an excellent example of how to gradually build an advantage using pure chess logic. He's also joining me in this video to help explain the game to you. Just want to mention that even though the game starts as a classical Sicilian, we'll quickly shift into a strategic discussion. And you don't need any prior knowledge of the opening to follow along.
His young opponent is waiting for d4, but Magnus plays this move h3, which made me really think, what's the point? Doesn't seem like anything that I would play for sure. I'm guessing that in case of d5, white takes, black recaptures, and then we push d4. Is that
it could be one of variations, but also with the d5 we can enter in some Rossolimo.
Magnus indeed continued with the Rossolimo's bishop b5, and we'll get back to it. But first I want to highlight how this seemingly harmless move, h3, can affect the action in the center. When white takes on d5 and plays d4, black wants to force white to break the tension and allow the f8 bishop to develop to c5 in one move instead of two. However, with h3 played, there's no bishop g4 to pressure white into playing d takes c5. As a result, the d4 pawn stays, keeping the tension until white chooses the best moment to trade on c5.
Still very, very odd move to play this early. It's something we normally tell our beginner level students not to do in the opening, especially because
Definitely
you don't want to lose time.
Yes.
But sometimes there is some deeper strategy.
Now back to the game. After d5, as I mentioned, white chose bishop b5.
Knight f6 played. Here I really like the move. I mean, I expected e5 here. But then you get kind of some sort of French structure.
Defense, yes.
Yeah, and then it's, you know that as black, of course, we like to play these positions since we play French. It doesn't seem that dangerous for black in that case.
Yes, definitely it's working for black.
Yeah. So Magnus surprised me with the d3. I mean, does look passive a little, but it's related with the idea of if black takes, basically creating double isolated pawns. Terrible structure for black, and then capturing back on e4, meaning probably better game for white. Unless I'm missing something, maybe you can say, or maybe continue. Let's see what happened after d3. Yeah, next move, black. What do you think of this d4?
It's natural move, taking some space, but I think this move cost black to lose the game. After next move, white is already better.
So why would you, let's say, trying to explain why this d4 is not so great, even though black is getting more space?
He's giving us too much space now. I mean, c4 square is a weak square. We can't support that with e5. That is the problem here. If black push the pawn on e5, he's completely fine here.
Marko points out that the c4 square becomes an outpost for white after bishop takes c6 and b takes c6. So even though black gains space with d4, they weaken their queenside with this early pawn advance. What do you think? What's best for white here? Is retreating to e2 okay?
Actually, there are a lot of problems with knight e2. There is a concrete problem.
It will be blunder. Take a pause here. Try to see what white will play, what white should play here.
Well, as Marko announced, an immediate retreat of the knight would be a blunder due to the double attack after queen a5. Additionally, black would like to avoid having their c-pawns doubled. Therefore, white should first trade on c6 and then move the knight.
It does look like a much, much better version of the reverse King's Indian or such.
King's Indian reversed on steroids. White's plan involves preparing f4, and if black allows, pushing f5 to unleash a massive attack on the king side.
And take a look now. Magnus also could return the knight on d2 and then to put the knight on c4. But this was totally wrong idea if we focus on to play on the queen side. Why? That is the good question. So if we put the knight on c4, black has the problem with the bishop on c8, and through the rest of the game, that bishop didn't move from that place.
Therefore, moving the knight to the king side, where white is preparing to launch an initiative, sounds quite logical. In the game, after bishop e7, white castled.
And after black castle, knight g3. Okay, knight g3 is connected with rook e1, and then to protect that pawn. I mean, white wants to push e5, and someone needs to protect that pawn.
With the knight g3, the knight is moving to the side where it belongs. However, the move knight e5 also comes to mind. So after queen c7, white can quickly play f4, which is the most natural idea given the current pawn structure.
I'd like to also point out one interesting thing, strategic nuance here. This structure here in the center, pawns on the light squares. I like to do that when I was young, normally just placing the pawns on the color of the bishop that I don't have anymore.
Once you create this pawn chain, just draw an arrow from the bottom to the top, and you'll see where to build your initiative and push your pawns. Back to the game. Black played knight e7, aiming to push the e-pawn and free the light square bishop. However, it was too late, as white pushed e5 first.
If we'd imagine e5 at this point, when the knight's still on f6, the knight goes to d5, and it's much better than standing on d7. So, when you go knight to d7, and now we play e5, it's basically terrible for this knight. There is no even chance to... Oh, there is a chance.
There is a chance, but still, this knight will be lonely there. So without support of other pieces, he's lonely, he can't do anything.
It would be actually a strong post for the knight, but getting there takes more time. Overall, black lacks a good pawn break, and with their remaining pieces being passive, this poses a serious problem.
Queen c7, black is desperately trying to do something, but of course we have rook e1, and nobody can attack that pawn. There is no third piece who can attack. f6 is not available because of the pawn on e6. So now practically black aborted his mission to attack this pawn anymore, so he played rook d8.
White continued with knight h5, putting pressure on g7.
He wants to provoke g6, which happened in the game here. So g6, and white or Magnus returns his knight
immediately.
But now situation is even worse for black. Why? Because as you can see, pawns are on light squares. It will be huge problem to stop white to play through the dark squares. Okay, so knight b6, and now fantastic move. That is bishop g5. He wants to exchange dark square bishop, and now we can see how bad was move bishop rook d8, because now he can't play bishop f8 and to move, at least to keep dark square bishop on the board. So now he's forced to trade. I mean, he doesn't want, but in one moment white will trade. So he trade immediately. I think this is losing tempo for black, because why he should trade here? Because the knight will jump there, and then on e4 he can choose where to jump from that place. There is two good squares here. So I don't know about bishop g4. Probably there is a much more useful move here, knight d5, something like that, to cover at least one of dark squares, not to take here and to bring the knight in the game. Queen d7. Okay, so someone needs to cover dark squares, so queen d7. Queen d2.
Well, this wasn't the best way to continue the attack. According to Stockfish, queen g4 would have been a better way to defend the knight, while also bringing the queen into play. The idea is to follow up with a knight 5 to e4 and then knight h5, eventually playing knight hf6 for a crushing attack. In the game after queen d2, black tried to steer things up on the queen side with c4.
So he wants to change something in pawn structure. And there is a rule in chess, never play on the side where your opponent wants to play. So now it's perfect for white to not touch anything. This is the best way how he can hold this perfect position what he has, and to continue to build position on the king side.
White played knight 3 e4, but the computer suggests a different approach. The best move is queen f4, with a plan to follow up with queen h4, then sacrifice on h5, and after f5, e takes f, and queen takes f6, bring the rook to e4, threatening rook g4. If black tries e5 to block rook g4, white plays knight h7, attacking the queen and setting up to capture on e5 with the rook, followed by rook g5. Stockfish confirms white is clearly winning here. The move played in the game allows h6, leaving the g knight without a good square to move to.
Okay, we can check him here and then to bring the knight on e4 again and to jump on d6. But those knights then doesn't work together. They are on good places, but they are not working together. And also what could be some concern for white is black can trade this knight for the pawn on e5 and immediately one of those knights will hang.
Yeah.
So he played it here, knight f3. So he returns his knight. Now the knight is passive there. But we will see. Magnus
already has an idea of how to make it active and dangerous again.
King g7. And now, as you can see here, now Magnus has 1 minute and 58 seconds. After next move, he has 1 minute. So it's a key moment in the game for him.
Calculating the critical line with knight e6 was necessary. And this move puts pressure on the d4 pawn. And black will likely need to play c5 soon. But first, they must deal with the c4 pawn. Let's see what Magnus had in mind.
C takes on d3, of course it's normal move. We capture, of course, with the pawn. Why with the pawn? Because now we have open c file. Still, we're taking some space with that pawn, so why not?
I remember when the game was on, I was thinking when c takes d3 happened by black, Magnus replied with c takes d kind of immediately.
And right after that, he frowned, realizing he had blundered. Pause the video for a moment and see if you can figure out what he missed in this position, where recapturing on d3 seems like a no-brainer. Feel free to put your solutions in the comment section. We're just gonna say it is related with the Zwischenzug or an in-between move. Back to the game. After c takes d3, black responded with knight d7.
Now he's threatening to capture here. It's easy to calculate that he must play queen f4 to protect that. That is why he didn't capture with the queen, so he needs queen on f4 square. And the pawn on d4 is falling now. Only way to stop that is to play c5, but after that he saw, when he played knight d6 before that, he calculated that he will play b4 here and the pawn will fall. Why that is important to take the pawn on d4? This is the good question. Because this is only way how the knight from f3 can work.
After c takes b4 and knight takes d4, the knight becomes active in a way that's deadly for black. Black simply cannot stop knight c6, after which white gains an exchange. Black opted for a counterattack with knight d5.
Okay, so in the game was queen h6, check. So he wanted to, not only to take a material, also he wanted to simplify position. With that, he's exchanging almost everything.
Winning a pawn in the process. In the game we saw king takes h6, white took on e7, and the king retreated to g7.
If black takes on e7, we have...
Yeah, we have knight f7 and we will capture the rook, yeah.
Okay.
King g7 to protect that. We capture the bishop, it's a free bishop. Knight f4, and now he continued to be active. So he didn't worry about this pawn, he wanted to activate his rooks. So rook e4, then rook d1, and rook c4. Okay, for a moment, black thought maybe he will capture something here, but this is only for one move, because now we can double on c file and the knight will fall here. Rook c6, we capture, and now good move for black. So he played rook d7, this is only move. We can see here that Magnus is not giving any chance to his opponent to be active, to create some counterattack. That is how top players in the world always play.
This is a great takeaway. Even when you're ahead in material, continue improving your position with every move.
So king f1, f6, this pawn is free, knight e8, knight f6, and then he returns the knight.
Well, look, I think he did well with black playing f6. I was thinking, why would he do that? But actually, I think the king is in danger if he allows knight e8, knight f6, rook c8.
Yeah, but we could play that before maybe
King f1.
Yeah, king f1.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe knight e8 here. Then king h6 maybe running away from...
Yeah, but we can play h4 again, but there is a g5 maybe for black. So why to think now? This is some blitz game, so bring the king to collect a couple of pawns and we will promote new queen without any counterattack from the opponent. And now interesting move, knight e4. He wants to return the knight on d6 to close every single file, so the black rook can't be active, and then he will bring the king.
And we are going to speed things up, as this game was decided long ago.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so this kid played to the very end.
Yeah, till the end. So in some moment he tried with some...
Kid tried for stalemate against Carlsen.
And here we are. So rook c6, if we capture that...
The king gets stalemated.
So first check. And now the king can breed. So he can go on f8. But Magnus decided to repeat the moves. He's just
playing around with his kid.
Yeah, definitely. And then he took the rook. And there is a checkmate in 2. e6. And then he must play king g8, rook e8, checkmate.
Good attacking technique again. And playing on the weak squares, I think was the team here. One of the main teams, actually.
Yeah, he decided to play on that bad bishop on c8, so he completely closed him with bishop takes on c6, b takes on c6. After that, he just playing how to not allow his opponents to activate him, and practically you are playing with one piece more.
I'd focus on the plan of moving the bishop to b5 to eventually get rid of it, then playing d3 to set up a strong pawn chain, and using the remaining bishop, now free from our own pawns. Now, this kind of pawn structure can be aimed for in many openings, especially as black against 1d4, like in the Nimzo or Bogo Indian. It gives every player, from beginner to advanced, what they really want, and that's a clear plan right from the start.